Hey there neighbors, Kevin here with eTrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install TowSmart's Class III trailer hitch receiver here on our 2024 Ford Edge. If you're looking to get out on the trail or potentially tow a small trailer behind your Ford Edge, then you're going to need a trailer hitch to do so. And TowSmart has a great option for you with their Class III trailer hitch. This trailer hitch is going to come with a 2-inch by 2-inch receiver tube opening, which is the most common for all of those accessories out there on the market. Now there are some 1 1/4-inch accessories out there, typically your bike racks, that you might need to get a reducer for. But typically those are going to come with some sort of adapter if there isn't one already. But if it does not come with that, you can pick up a reducer here to slide into there, and then you can put your accessory in and lock it in place with your hitch, pin, and clip. Now this one does have a little bit of a unique one because this is that old J-style pin and clip where you have the 2 holes, with the rear one being a little bit larger, so that's going to be that 5/8 diameter hole, and then the smaller one is going to be for that J side of that pin so that it can lock in there and give you a little bit more security. Now a lot of accessory manufacturers have pretty much kind of gotten away from the J-pin style, but if you have any accessory that's going to be using that style pin, then you already have the hole in place for it, so you're all ready to go whether you need it or not. Now as far as capacities go, this has a 4,000 pound gross towing weight capacity, which is that capacity of pulling a trailer, and then there is a 600 pound tongue weight capacity, which is going to be the downward pressure on the inside of our receiver tube here, and that's going to be your bike racks and your cargo carriers. So anything that's not on the ground where it would have wheels to help support that weight, that's going to be your tongue weight right here. So you want to make sure that you go and you verify exactly what your vehicle can handle so that you're not overloading it. Now when it comes to hauling your accessories or that trailer, you're going to want to have an idea about your clearances here. So measuring from the ground up to the top inside edge of our receiver tube, we're getting a 13 1/8 inch measurement here, so you got plenty of room here. Typically you want to see about 12 inches. If you don't have at least 12-inch ground clearance, then typically we're going to want to use some sort of adapter to help get that shank a little bit higher, so that way if you hit a steep incline or decline, you're not going to end up bottoming out and damaging your property. Now the other thing here is going to be our clearance. So for any folding equipment that we have, so that bike rack that folds up or that cargo carrier that's going to fold up so they can give you a little bit less length overall, you're going to want to measure from the center of your hitch pin hole out to the furthest edge of your fascia, which is looking like right around 5.5, maybe 6 inches here. So what you can do is you can go to the shank of your piece of equipment, whether that's the bike rack or the cargo carrier, and you're going to measure from the center of that hitch pin hole to the closest point when that is folded up. And if it's less than that 5 to 6 inches there, then you're probably going to need an adapter to give you a little bit more space so you can fold it up without accidentally rubbing up against your fascia. Now I talked about it before, this is not going to come with a hitch pin and clip, so you'll definitely want to pick up a 5/8 pin and clip. That way you can secure your ball mount or whatever accessory you have. Now typically those accessories are going to come with it in place already. What I recommend is swapping out any just standard one that you get and switching over to a locking or an anti-rattle one, just so that you can make it quieter and more secure so no one's taken off with your property. But if you are going to be towing a trailer, you're also going to want to consider what type of safety chain hooks are actually going to fit with these loops here. So our standard S style is going to have no problems. I don't see any bind up here. Now a heavier duty option, when we have these clevises, we can get it in from the bottom, but I am hitting right there, so it's a little bit too short, so you might end up getting it to a spot where it could bind potentially, and then maybe your chains are going to want to bind up on you. You could still get away with doing this though. I don't see you having a major issue, but that might be something to consider too. But typically when you have a larger clevis like this, that's on a much heavier trailer than what our vehicle can handle, so most likely this won't be a problem. As far as installation goes, this one is pretty simple. There is a little bit of trimming you're going to have to do to the panels that are under here on both sides, and then you are going to have to fish wire your hardware in. But luckily, the end of the frame rails right here, it's pretty easy to get your hand in there. A little bit of finagling to get it in, but honestly, this wasn't a really hard hitch to do. So if you feel like you can do this, then stick around and I'll show you how to in just a moment. But if you're feeling like this might be a bit more than you want to do, or maybe you just don't have the tools to do so, then please feel free to use our dealer locator, and you can enter in your zip code to find a shop near you to get this hitch installed professionally. Starting off our install, we're going to be removing these underbody panels right here. You'll have one on your passenger and on your driver's side. And these are going to have 4 fasteners holding them in place. The 2 right here, we're going to need a 5.5 millimeter socket for, and then there's going to be 2 more up in here along the frame rail that are going to require a 10 millimeter socket. So we'll get these popped out and set aside. Now, on both of our panels, we're going to be doing a little bit of trimming. We're going to be cutting out this portion right here with just that one back 10 millimeter nut being the only thing that's going to hold up this inner side, because we're going to have our hitch mounting flange sitting right in this space, so we can't have that plastic there. So we're going to want to measure over 3.5 inches. We'll mark that. And then we're going to do 7.5 inches from the top down. So that's that side where it's got that cut out like that. We're going to come down 7.5 inches. So comes out just right before this back hole here. Although, now that I have my tape measure up there, it does look like it goes a little bit past that. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait on this. The instructions show this basically being right up on the lip here and then just right there. So why don't we get our hitch in place, and then we'll hold one of these up so that way we're not cutting off a bunch of extra trim that we don't need to. Next step's going to be lowering our exhaust. We have a little bit more room to work with here while we mount up our hitch to the frame rails. Now what I like to do is just take a cam strap and run it a little bit further back, so that way it's going to help support it but not be in our way to where we don't have enough wiggle room to move it. You can just stick that onto the coil springs for your rear suspension. Then you're going to take some silicone lube, and we are going to spray our holders here, so that way when we go to pop these off, it'll be a whole lot easier for us. Now if you have a sport model, it does say that you're going to have to remove a couple of fasteners and actually pull the whole assembly down. And if that's the case, you are going to need a T20 Torx bit. But for us, luckily this isn't, so we can just pop it right out of our rubber isolator, and our cam strap's there to help support it. Now the next step's going to be taking a little piece out of your center panel if you have one. On ours, we don't have it, and even some of the other videos we've shot with this specific vehicle, the other ones haven't had it either, so this might be just maybe a trim package thing where you might have it if you have like a sport, but you don't have it if it's not a sport model. Essentially, there's instructions that are going to say, hey, cut out this portion right here, and there's a little diagram showing it with the measurements as well. And then also one thing that we've seen in some other cases is there's a stud right here holding that up, and we've had to cut that off in other cases. I would definitely test fit your hitch a little bit first. A lot of times I find that the manufacturers want you to cut a lot more than what you actually need. And I like to keep it nice and tight with every cut I make, so I'm really not getting rid of plastic that should really be there. So maybe just test fit it once, make sure that you're not going to run into anything else, and if you are, that way you can cut out just that one small portion that you need and get the hitch in place. Next, we're going to grab 3 of our fish wires, 3 carriage bolts, and 3 of our spacers. Now, we're going to be fish wiring this through the frame rail, and on the end of our frame rail, there's a decent sized opening that's going to allow us to put our hardware and our spacer blocks through, because these are pretty large. And that way, we're not having to enlarge any holes in our frame rail. We don't have to we'll spend a couple minutes just fighting this, getting it through, but it's not going to be as long with, sitting there and grinding this out and, potentially damaging something else. So we're going to need to be in this hole, and this one up here. So for the side one, I'm going to do that one first, then I'll come back and get this back one. And essentially, we're going to do this the reverse way. So I'm going to stick the space that the bolt would thread into in first. We're going to have that pop out that rear hole at the back side of our frame rail, and then once it's through, I'm going to put my spacer block on and then thread in my bolt, and then we'll pull it through so that way it pops right out where we need it to. So I'm going to get that in there and feel around for it. Here we go. Oh. And one thing I like to also do is just bend the end of that up so that way it can't back out All right, now we can slip on our spacer block, and I'm gonna push that up in there. It is more of a slot than it is just a large opening, so you may have to kind of wiggle it around to get it all the way in there, but if you just kind of follow the fish wire, it'll make it a lot easier. Almost in. There we go. Now we can grab the other end and we will thread in our bolt. And then same thing, I'm going to help push it through. Now when we go to pull on it, it'll pull right up through the hole that we need it in. So we'll just repeat that again, like I said, for this hole back here, and this one up here, and then we're gonna do the same thing over on our driver's side. Now that we have all of our hardware fished through our frame rail, I'm gonna push the frame rail outer sides in, just because once we get our hitch up in the way, we're gonna have a bracket that's gonna sit right up against that. We don't want that to whack that and then not wanna fit. So with that popped in, we're gonna get a second set of hands and then help lift our hitch up. So as we lift this up, we're gonna grab onto our fish wires and we're gonna poke it through the holes on our hitch. So you'll see you have a slot here, slot here. You can ignore that other slot that's running front to back. We want those side to side ones. And then this guy right here, this side bracket, that's that one where I said we need to push the bolt in, so it's out of the way. But like I said, as you start lifting this up, make sure you get those fish wires in so everything will line up properly. Now there's pressure a little bit on this from the hitch just kind of hanging down on it, but typically when you do this, a lot of those bolts will want to kind of wiggle right back in. So what you can do is either take a flathead screwdriver and press it into the threads, or I just typically use my fingernail. That way I can hold it still and get the nut on. So we're just gonna get these hand tight for right now and get all 6 of them in place, and then we'll come back and torque them down. Now we can torque everything down. So I already did the driver's side just because I wanted to kind of figure out exactly what we would need. So I originally was using a 3/8 drive torque wrench and some sockets, but unfortunately the deep well is too tall and the short well is too short. So switching up to the 1/2 inch size, the deep or short well on those are right in the middle, so that ended up being the size that we needed. Now you could use either 3/4 or 19mm socket for this. You will also need a swivel adapter. So I've got one of these right here that gives me quite a bit of adjustment here. And that is because this rearmost bolt that we have right here, the flange for our mounting bracket here on our trailer hitch is gonna be right in the way. So you have to have it just perfect in order for you to get it in there. And then I use an extension so I could get all the way up in there for both the vertical bolts. On the side one, I just take that off and I'm just using the short well to get in there just because it's a little bit tighter of a space to kind of work around. So we'll get these all torqued down to spec and be ready to go. All right, so remember how at the beginning we did not end up cutting our panel here? I did measure once we had our hitch in place, and from that stud for that rear hole that we would be leaving, it's about a 1/2 inch up. So I'm gonna measure a 1/2 inch up from here. We'll make our line and then we can cut out that section. And we're gonna do the same thing on both sides. So if you are measuring, probably do about 7 1/4 instead of that 7 1/2 that's listed in the instructions. With that hole cut out, this will now fit around our hitch so we can reinstall it. And we'll get it lined up here. Secure it with that 10mm. And then now we're going to switch back over to that 5.5mm socket and get our 2 screws in. And now that that's back in place, the only thing we have left to do is just reinstall our exhaust by popping it back into our exhaust hangers. If you need to, you can also spray a little bit more lube on there so that it's easier to slip through. And then we can remove our cam strap. And that'll do it for the installation. Well, that's going to do it for our look at and installation of the TowSmart Class III trailer hitch receiver here on our 2024 Ford Edge. My name's Kevin, and if you still have some questions about what's going to be the right trailer hitch for your Ford Edge, please feel free to reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, a comment on this video, or a phone call to our customer service department, and we'd be happy to help you out on your journey.